Hello again, everybody. This is Mr. Everything. I'm coming at you with another wargaming and miniature video. In this video, we're going to do an update to our Black Powder Boot Camp tutorial series that I made. This is going to be an update identifying the changes between Black Powder 1st edition and Black Powder 2nd edition. Alright guys, well the very first thing you notice is the look and feel of the books is different. This one kind of shows all the different eras that it would cover, like Jacobite or French and Indian War, Civil War, American Revolutionary War, Napoleonics. It doesn't have that on the 2nd edition. All it has is Napoleon, you know, and it's kind of like a shield and a wreath around it, and then it just looks cleaner than this, but I do like both pictures. And you still get like a picture of some of the figures that Warlord Games and Perry Miniatures offers, and it tells you the scenarios that are in this book as opposed to Freeman's Farm. I don't see Freeman's Farm over here anymore. Then it has like Perez, Miguel, Crimea, Hangman's Creek. So they wanted to give you a bunch of new scenarios. So you've got Elixheim, Clifton Moor, French and Indian War, you got Fort Ligonier, Chinsura, and then the American War of Independence, you got Bunker Hill. Battle of North Point is 1812, Quatre Bras, Napoleonics, the Eve of Waterloo, and then a couple of American Civil War. You got Kernstown and Antietam, and then the Sioux War, you got Dead Man's Creek, and Zululand, you got, I want to say, Nyezini. So as opposed to 7 scenarios, you're getting 12 scenarios in this book. Alright, inside is still black. 1st edition, 2nd edition. Got kind of a yellowish green. This is kind of a lime green paper. And down here you're looking at more of a linen or brown paper. Still has beautiful pictures. They both have beautiful pictures. This has contents. You can see the contents are spread out across one page. I consider this the face of the page, where these contents are all on one page, and it's a little bit condensed. This is a bigger font, so it's easier to read, and it brings up where all the rules are. This does too, but it's in kind of a stylized script, hard to read. This is more of a New Times Roman, a lot easier to read. In chapter 1, 1st edition, it's talking about what you need to play. And in chapter 1, 2nd edition, they also are talking about what's needed to play. Okay, you'll notice that these pictures are that's the same picture. Basically, it's just showing how units are laid out. Over here in 1st edition, underscored Brigade 1, 2, 3, 4, Brigade 5 at the rear. That really was kind of, I understood because I know what I'm reading, but a new person might not understand this. Where on this picture, they actually put the brigade numbers directly on there, like Brigade 1, Brigade 2, Brigade 3, and and then they've got Brigade 5 in the rear. And you can see it's right there, Brigade 5. The unit, the army organization, brigades, the number of models, that has not changed. None of that's changed. Generals are still generals. Troop stats are still the same. You still have your hand-to-hand value, your shooting, your morale, your stamina, and the special abilities. The core rules of the game have not changed. If you take any of the supplements or campaign books from previous to the 2nd edition, you'll still be able to use it with the 2nd edition. Okay, formations is its own little section. In here, formations is a little bit harder to read, I don't know, and you wouldn't be able to locate it or find it as easy, because now you got formations on the side, right, on both sides, right? So you'd be able to find formations. All the formations are exactly the same. And then game rules. You notice I'm turning pages and they're all pretty much following in line. But now they colorized the blue turn, the red turn. Where up here, all they did was colorize a stripe, which that was fine for me. Preparing for play, measuring distance, learning the rules. Same. Now, command, its own chapter. Command is just like a subchapter, and it's hard to find that. But here, now you've got it written on both sides. That's the way it is pretty much throughout the entire book, which means it's going to be a lot easier to find things. And then you can see right here what you need to do in simple distinction of how you issue commands and how what are the steps to take command. That's not in here. It's in the text. You have to kind of find that. And then it talks about rolling dice and stuff like that. And this talks about the rolling dice as well. But this, you can see it's grayed. It draws your attention. A lot better. Okay, now there is something to note about orders. When you're talking about brigade orders, but then you're also talking about command of your superior commander, the general. They call that the general. In first edition, this is a change. Yeah, in first edition, if you had a general and he was issuing orders to his regiments or his battalions or whatever, and he failed his role, he would stop issuing orders. But the other regiments in his brigade would still be allowed to be given orders, but they would be given by a superior commander. So if he had a general above him, like if his brigade had a division general, that division general could issue orders to the regiments that failed to receive orders. Not the ones that failed success rolls, but the ones that haven't been given orders yet. That's not the way it is in second edition. In second edition, the general, if he's attached or within 12 inches of a unit and he wants to give that unit commands, all he does is allow re-rolls for the brigade commander. Yeah, the general does not order troops directly, but instead can move to accompany one of the brigade commanders. He can only, even if they're within 12 inches, he can only accompany one brigade commander. And the brigade commander who is accompanied by the general issues an order. The result can always be re-rolled once. And then you take the second result, whether it's better or worse. Only one re-roll can be attempted. So basically that puts more emphasis on your brigade commanders and not having this, because in the past you'd have like an 8 value for your brigade commanders, and then you'd have like this 9 or 10 value for your division commanders, and they would basically always succeed. If you fail to roll with your brigade commanders, you throw in your division commander. It got lost in the shuffle. Every time I played, a lot of people kept forgetting which commanders were commanding what. But in this case, you have one general, and he can, which the general is either a division general or he's the overall commander of the table or what have you. But he is the only one, and he can accompany a single brigade and issue it a re-roll, and that re-roll is on the original brigade commander's leadership. So he doesn't even need to have a leadership, because you're not ever going to be rolling it. You're only going to be rolling for the brigade commander's leadership. Interpenetration of units is this whole thing here, and it's right there. So this is like a 2-column book, and this is a 3-column book. You got 3 columns. So you get, it seems like you get more information in a smaller area in these books, but it also means all the information is usually on one page. So I'm not having to flip through the book to find all the details of this one rule that I'm looking for. Terrain, its own big category, different category. Pretty much exactly the same. You got woods, buildings, rough ground. they tried to put all of that on the same pages. Like this is woods right there, that little section. Where in second edition, woods has all of this. It's probably about the same number of words, but it's just easier to read this way. Rough ground had this little section, has this whole top of the page. Obstacles is split between there and here. It's all right there. So far, you're getting the idea. Now, they go straight to buildings, where over here they're talking about impassable and embellishing, which they have impassable and embellishing, but because buildings are an important part of terrain, where in first edition, buildings were given this short little section right there, and here, see, they split it onto 2 pages. In second edition, buildings are given their own chapter of about 3-4 pages, 5 pages. So buildings, they put it in the advanced rules. When to shoot, shooting. Range is in a little card. They're kind of hidden. It's the same chart, but they explain it. Leader's field of view, blind area, when to shoot, what's in ranged combat, how they measure the distances. It's all the same, it's just worded and laid out differently. Now, there was supposedly a rule change about clear targets, what's clear and what's not clear. You're using the same pictures, and they're saying this different things, or saying the same thing but just differently. So it's not a change in the rules, in my opinion. It's just a clarification. Okay, enfiladed targets. You can see how enfiladed targets is written up here, and it's here, and you get a larger diagram, and it shows exactly the same thing. Okay, second edition. When shooting at an enfiladed target, the player is allowed to re-roll any or all shots that miss. Okay, why wouldn't you re-roll all the shots that miss? Yeah, take the dice that have scored misses and roll them again to see if any further hits are scored. Okay, that's second edition. First edition, the total number of dice rolled is doubled. So this, you roll double the dice, can do double the hits. This, you can't do double the hits, but you can do all the hits. So that's a change. Enfiladed targets, reroll, double the dice. All right, then we go to hand-to-hand combat. Okay, there has been some considerable changes in hand-to-hand combat. One main one is how many units are able to attack or defend from another unit. Okay, they talk about positioning the charging unit, and you can see these diagrams are a little bit easier to, these diagrams here are a lot easier to read than this mixed up jumble mess. In this set, if you were able to fit 2 regiments against 1 regiment, you were able to do it. In this second edition, you cannot do that. You have to put 1 regiment against 1 regiment per side all the time. So like this shows you have a regiment, a regiment, a regiment all around the 3 different sides. You're able to do that even in second edition. But the downside is, or the difference is, you have to be able to get 2 units against 1 unit. The size difference of the units have to be 2 steps. So large unit can be attacked by 2 small units. Cannot be attacked by 2 medium-sized units. And a medium-sized unit cannot be attacked by 2 large or 2 small. it can only be attacked by one medium. So really the only time you're ever going to get 2 units against 1 is if there is a large unit being attacked by 2 small units. Now they have a big chapter up here, break tests and shaken units. You don't see that here. Yeah, they do a commander section before they get to break tests and shaken units. Jumping forward in this book, we go to generals and other commanders. They have bonus attacks, joining units, vulnerability, command models. So it's the same, it's just positioned differently. I think they are saying that commanders, that's not an advanced rule, that's a basic rule. So they moved it further forward in the rule book. Break tests. Same thing. Now in first edition, it just jumped straight to advanced rules. In second edition, they added a chapter called Victory because they wanted a more clearly defined how do you win the battle. In first edition, we knew how to win the battle, and they have victory and defeat back here. But here, they're just talking about victory. And now we go into advanced rules. Okay, advanced rules, chapter 2. So all that before weren't even chapters. Okay. See what kind of advanced rules we've got. Special formations. Well, now they've got advanced rules, and then they go battalion square, units that form square special rule. Then they go brigade squares down here. And then rules from fighting from buildings. Okay, why would they split that up? You got building as terrain and then fighting from buildings in 2 separate complete chapters. Where in the second book, but buildings are all one 5-page area. Okay. Arsenal, they reworded it. Arsenal, I guess, is talking about special weapons that are on the battlefield. In this one, it just talks about howitzers and mortars. But there's more than that. Like they even show, well, that's a howitzer, right? That's a 18-pounder field gun. They also talk about rockets, because that guy's got a rocket launcher right there. Machine guns is this next chapter, but they consider machine guns as still part of the arsenal. Rockets, its own chapter. Rockets, part of the arsenal. But now they've added this rocket mishap table, which they didn't have this mishap table in the first edition. Range, number of shots, all that's pretty much the same, but now they've got mishaps. And we already talked about generals and commanders. And then they now have, and with buildings, they've got their own rules. You got building blocks. Okay, that's an area where the building is. Shooting from a building. Fighting from a building. It's all in the same area. Combat results from buildings. Break tests while in a building. Tall buildings. Setting buildings on fire. And then a selection of useful rules. Down here they just say useful rules. So now the useful rules are the special abilities that units have, like brave, determined charge. Let's see if there's any different ones. Okay, they've added a couple of abilities in second edition. One of them is called mounted infantry. To field a unit that would typically fight both mounted and dismounted, you need both mounted models and their foot equivalents. When mounted, blah, 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 blah. It goes into all the rules about being mounted. And then they've got poor shooters. This is a new rule. They don't have poor shooters first edition. Unit rerolls a single hit every time it shoots. Okay, now in first edition it was called the personal qualities of commanders. And in second edition it gives useful rules for commanders. And it says randomly generated commanders. It doesn't really say that up here, but that's what they're doing. They're rolling dice to see what the abilities of that commander are. And then in addition to that, there's more info for your generals, like Commander-in-Chief, Battlefield General, Warrior General, General with ADCs, Aide de Camp. All right, now the next chapter in here is scenarios. Well, they're now back to victory and defeat, which we've already talked about. And now this, first edition does a good thing, and it explains the different eras and how they're different and how they could be gamed differently. And that's a good 5 or 6, 7, 8 pages. And then they don't go into scenarios, they go into battles that they played and their outcome of their battles. You have to kind of piece it together and figure out how to recreate their battle. I mean, they give you a map and the units that they used and things like that, which that's pretty much how you do a battle anyway. But in here, they talk about the scenario, what it's representing, where the scenarios take place in the world. I thought that was a pretty cool picture. But like, here's a battle, and then it talks about what happened in the battle, the armies in the battle. Then it gives you a map, the table, objectives, the army lists, and their abilities. This doesn't give you any abilities. It just says, hey, there's the 2nd New Hampshire with this many figures and the 2nd New York with this many figures. They don't worry about telling you how many figures it is, because you can play in different scales. Like, you can play 4 bases as a regular unit, or you could play 6 bases as a regular unit. As long as you're consistent across the board, you're fine. So they don't need to dictate to you how many figures are in the unit. They just say, yeah, regular infantry, regular cavalry. If there was small, tiny, it would say it. And then here's another battle. The history of the battle, why it took place, the units, their stats. And this goes into all the units and stuff, but it also tells you like how many figures are in each unit. But it could just say small unit. I mean, it doesn't have to say 12 figures. They're in color. These are in color as well, but very minor, very little color. In the first book, they were more concerned about showing you their miniatures and pictures of the table and not really explaining how to play the scenario. But in the second book, the scenarios are explained, what makes a victory, what types of troops you need to use. It's just a lot better. Quatre Bras, I noticed, this is the battle I did last year. This has 100 million pictures about Quatre Bras. But guess what? There was a lot of troops there. There's no way you could play the entire Battle of Waterloo on a table at the black powder scale unless you scaled it up and said like each one of your, you could do it. You could say each one of your regiments that you're using, you could say those are brigades and play it a lot like Napoleon's battles if you want. You could do it, but then you'd have to use a gigantic table. And this looks like it's 2 tables overlapping. I've been kind of getting a little hankering for some Civil War. Okay, and then you got all your quick reference tables right here, which if you want, you can go to the Warlord site and you can actually download the new quick reference tables. And finally, Black Powder quick reference table. Finally, the most important thing on 2nd edition, it has an index. So if you need to find out where the building rules are, you can just look up, oh, right there, buildings. Or if you want to look up orders, there's all the different rules for orders, sharpshooters, squares, formations. It's all right there. So it's going to be, this is going to speed your game up. 2nd edition, it's going to make your game go a lot faster. It's going to make my games go a lot faster. All right, so that was an update for those of you that have already watched my boot camp for Black Powder. This will be an add-on, an appendix to the Black Powder 1st edition tutorial series that I did for 2nd edition. All right, guys, thanks for checking it out, and I'll see you next time.